Thank you all. So that brings us to me then, Mandy.
You're on. Thank you.
Well, I'll introduce myself. I'm Mike Pennington. I'm a volunteer with the city of Duluth. And as Barb mentioned, I serve on the tree commission with Barb. I am a forester by education, but my skills are about 30 years rusty because I left that field in about 1983 for my current field. But the interest never waned, but the skills and a lot of the knowledge is pretty rusty. I know there's some stuff up here, but the cobwebs and the dust, maybe a lot of you can relate to that. So, the reason I asked you for your professional background, I wanted to get a better feel for how big this choir is. When Sean first asked me to do this presentation, I did a little research on the Master Naturalist program, having never heard of it before, and I quickly realized that these folks are probably going to know as much or more than I do. But the presentation is geared probably for an audience that probably quite interested as many of you are in a lot of these things. However, a lot of the statistics that you're going to see and hear, I hope and think you'll find some of them interesting. I know you all know what an urban forest is. Obviously, you all know a lot about trees. But a lot of the statistics you're going to see, I think some of them will perhaps startle you and give you a better understanding of the importance of the urban forest. A lot of you have done these with the Master Naturalist program. A lot of it doesn't sound like anyway that it focuses much on the urban environment. It's more, it gets how many biomes that you can get certified in?
There's 3 that you can.
Okay. So I'll get started. I handed out a couple of 2 things here. The big one here, and Mandy, for anybody, I'll leave some extra copies for you too.
Thank
for
you.
anybody else. A lot of the statistics that you're going to see in some of the slides up here are cited in here. This gives you a pretty good background of what they did in evaluating and putting together an urban forest inventory for the city of Duluth. And then the smaller version of it is just a smaller version of the big one there. It summarizes some of the things that the big one has in there, just getting a quicker read. So the other thing, before I start, I'll ask any of you again. I don't know how many questions you have. If a question does come up, feel free to stop me at any time. We've got I don't know how much business you've got to conduct. I'll take as much time as you want. If the question is something that I don't have an answer for you, especially if it's a statistical question regarding some of the data from the city of Duluth, if you don't mind, jot it down on a piece of paper, your name and email address, and I'll get an answer for you to get back. So.
Do you want to see or do you want the lights turned on?
Go ahead, look over here. Everybody see okay? Yep. I think you all know what an urban forest is, but as it relates to this presentation here, what we define it as is all the trees within the city, public and private. However, a lot of the statistics that are going to be cited in this whole thing are only relative to the boulevard trees. We didn't have the capability of yet anyway, of taking inventory of all the private trees, park trees. As you know, Duluth and the city limits, there's a lot of trees. So the inventory that we did only takes into consideration in the statistics that summarizing shortly, have only to do with the boulevard trees. Again, I think most of you already know this. The urban forest provides benefits that the single trees do not. I mean, it's much more. The urban forest as a whole is much greater than the individual sum of the parts. The inventory that the city of Duluth did, and Barb, did you work on that too?
Not directly.
Okay. I was one of the volunteers for the inventory as well. It went from 2011 to 2013. I actually started doing inventory in the summer of 2010. And we inventoried every single tree every single boulevard tree in Duluth. You're going to see some of the things that, as we move forward here, some of the things that we did with those trees to come up with the data. But the inventory took a good solid 3 years to complete.
Why was the inventory done?
Well, they done 4 inventory. This was the 4th inventory. One in the 30s, I believe. One in late 60s, and then 79, I think, and then this one. Excuse me, 94, and then this one. In order to get a better understanding of how to manage urban forest, we felt we needed to know what we're working with. And going forward, we now know where every single tree is. We now know the size of every tree, at least as of the date of the survey. We did measurements of every tree, breast height, diameter, breast height. We did an inventory of the condition inventory of the crown, of any other damage on the tree that might occur on the roots and so forth. We also took GPS coordinates on every one of them too. And then in addition to the trees, if there was a vacant spot where a tree could be planted, a potential planting site, we also put GPS coordinates to that. So we know all the potential planting sites out there. We know where every single tree is. We know what every single species of that tree is. And again, the reason for it is so that we can better manage the urban forest as we go forward. Each of those 4 inventories, this one being the latest, every year the number of trees in the inventory has declined. And no surprise there, population has gone up between development and so forth. It's become an issue. So now, of course, we're going to be dealing with most likely emerald ash borer. So again, that sort of factors that plays into the importance of need to know what our urban forest is consisting of right now. But again, that's a small sample size. I mean, the entire city of Duluth obviously can get many, many more trees than we've got in Boulevard. A lot of benefits that the urban provides for us. I think some of the obvious ones are helping to clean our air and remove pollutants and greenhouse gases. This is sort of the beginning of a lot of the statistics. Again, just the boulevard trees alone have removed, they estimate, I should back up a little bit and tell you the inventory then, they had to take all the data and then spend many, many hours, a lot of volunteer hours, by the way, putting this data into a U.S. Forest Service program called iTree. And that iTree can calculate based on the size of the tree, the species, its location, all these different parameters. They can make 2 estimates. They can come up with some unit measurements. In this case, 16,241 pounds of pollutants can put annually by those boulevard trees, and then they can put a dollar value on it as well. So, sir.
What's the main source of pollution now in Duluth?
Specifically in Duluth, I don't know that we know. I think we can. Well, let me cite you some of the pollutants that are common. I don't know that these are all necessarily common to Duluth, but ozone obviously is continues to be an issue everywhere. Nitrogen dioxide. It's a toxic air pollutant emitted by industrial synthesis of nitric acid. Let's see. It's a byproduct of manufactured fertilizer. It goes into great detail on the issues of what some of these things do. with respect to nitrogen dioxide, Duluth urban forest removes 281 pounds of nitrogen dioxide and avoids 6,333 pounds of nitrogen dioxide for a total of 6,614 pounds annually. So that's just one of those 16,000. And these are the numbers on the ozone too. Duluth urban forest removes 1,656 pounds of ozone gas annually. Let's see what the others that make up this number. Sulfur dioxide, emitted by various industrial processes, including vehicles, vehicle exhaust. So, and then you've got volatile organic compounds, VOCs. These are present in a variety of chemicals. It takes out Duluth urban forest avoids 887 pounds of VOCs annually. So these are all present. The biggest offender appears to be. You've also got particulate matter too, which amounts to quite a bit too. But it appears that ozone and nitrogen dioxide would be, two of the nastier ones that they're able to take care of. This is, again, I think a pretty obvious one for folks like yourselves who are somewhat versed in this. Stormwater runoff, you remember the flood of 2012, the water's coming down that fast. It goes into our Duluth stormwater runoff system, which is a pretty sophisticated system. You're always seeing them working on, pretty massive projects around Duluth with respect to stormwater treatment. But when it comes out, when the rain comes down as fast as it has in major storms, those systems are often inadequate, and a lot of that just runs directly into Lake Superior. So between the tree canopies and roots that intercept a lot of the rainwater, it intercepts a lot of the permeable fluids that end up in our streams and lakes in the area. Of course, if you take a look at the lake especially down by the bridge after we have a major storm, you see where color the water turns. It's all that sediment running directly into the lake. Climate change in urban trees plays a big role in mitigating the effects of climate change. I'm sure you've all heard the urban heat island effect. It's probably not new, although this is a local picture. It's probably not as big a deal in Duluth because of that giant air conditioner that we've got down there called Lake Superior. But if you go down to Minneapolis in summer or some other big metropolitan areas, you'll feel it. Urban areas can get up to 10 degrees warmer than the surrounding rural areas because you've got all the asphalt and cement, all these heat-absorbing materials, and of course with fewer trees in these areas as well, and then you've got the impervious surfaces along the water to run off. This gets to be a big problem. The trees help to reduce the effect between the shade. Trees actually absorb ultraviolet rays. And of course, with evapotranspiration, you've got that, which gives off the little bit of moisture that tends to have a cooling effect on it too. So, the more trees you've got in an urban area, the more extensive your urban forest, the less you're going to be impacted by the urban heat island effect. Here's an example of New York City. You can, the dark areas on both maps on the right-hand side over there, the dark areas of vegetation, and if you look on the left-hand map, the dark areas are the warmer areas, or in this case, the less hot areas. And there's a direct correlation. The more vegetation, the cooler it's going to be. I'm not exactly sure how to interpret the data on this particular slide for you, other than to say that wherever you've got a dense forested area or urban forest, we've got a lot more organic matter. Organic matter holds moisture better and also is much more nutrient rich than areas that don't have decomposing trees and leaves and all the other things that go along with them. So when you've got periods of drought, areas that are tree covered are going to have cooler temperatures. They're going to be less prone to drought because of the soils that are in a better condition to be able to deal with those things there. Any questions about this one here? Duluth is finding this to be a real important issue. Duluth is becoming a very bicycle-friendly city, despite the challenging hills that we've got in the area here. They've expanded the lake walk to the western parts of town, and they know the importance of planting trees helps to attract folks to bike and walk. It's just a more attractive. It's almost a magnet to get folks to take advantage of alternative forms of transportation. Of course, the byproduct of that, if people are walking and biking more, we've got fewer carbon emissions being given off, and it's a win-win across the board there. Again, some of the obvious things: trees are offering shade and wind blocks, and the umbrella effect in downpours, and of course the calming effect that a tree-lined street or tree-lined parkway can have for people that want to that choose other forms of transportation. They also know statistically, they've done studies that people tend to drive slower on tree-lined streets than they do on streets that aren't tree-lined. Again, it's sort of a calming effect. Sorry. Soil erosion. Again, you folks are all well versed in what this is. This is a picture from Chester Creek, I believe, after the flood of 2012. And climate change is bringing more frequent and violent weather events. And that's the June 2012 is no exception. Obviously, this was despite the best efforts of all the vegetation, the trees and whatnot that were in this area, it was too much rain for even this to handle. Of course, having so much sloped area, the inclines and so forth doesn't help matters at all. But we know that if we've got tree cover, it reduces the amount of rainfall that actually directly impacts the ground below it. With the tree roots holding the soils in place as well as absorbing moisture and holding the moisture in the soil, we'll have less and less of this. These are some of the benefits of a healthy and vibrant urban forest that are a little bit hard to quantify, but they've done enough studies to know that these things are true. If you've got a hospital room that overlooks a tree-lined area instead of looking out over a parking lot or the roof of the next building, the studies are showing that people recover better. Same with stress recovery. If you've got you can look outside and look at a garden or trees. It's a stress reliever. Reduced obesity. It's a lot of it, again, is directly related to the previous slide where you've got folks that are more inclined to bike and walk and take other means of transportation. You're more inclined to get outside and enjoy the urban forest. Mental health, same thing. Clean water and air, we've talked about that. Trees reduce violence. There are studies that show that parts of town where trees are present, there's less violence, there's less domestic violence, there's less crime. The economic benefits, these are some of the things that a lot of folks don't think about too. If you've got a house with trees on it, you've got a yard with trees on it, your home value can increase in some areas by 10%. It also improves the number of buyers or increases the number of buyers if they have an interest in looking at your home. So obviously another benefit. If you've got parks nearby that have trees in it, green spaces, it increases the home value for you as well as the entire neighborhood. Another interesting study. You've got trees, people stick around longer and they spend more money. So, another economic benefit. This, of course, is a picture of Canal Park. Does anybody know? Let's see if I can get that. I know a lot of you do. Can anybody recognize this? Is this a Duluth slide? More familiar with this slide? Energy costs. If you've got a tree if you've got a building, your home, whatever, shaded by trees, we know our energy costs go down. You know, at my house, I've got the whole side of my south side of my house is covered by deciduous trees. I've got a lot of glass in that side of the house as well. In the summer, you get a lot of that shade there. The house stays cooler. I don't even have central air conditioning anymore. In the winter, the leaves all fall off then. I get a lot of sunlight, so it keeps my electric bill down in the winter as well. Another benefit to that, if you've got a building that's shaded, you don't have to run the air conditioning as often. Again, we're using less fuel, fewer carbon emissions, and we've also got the benefits, especially in the urban areas where you don't have the byproducts from the heating and cooling. Have you ever been outside standing by you've got a building, you have central air conditioning home? Anybody have central air home? You stand by that compressor outside in the summer when it's running, there's warm air coming out of that thing. Again, it's another contributor to that urban heat island. But also, again, with a shaded building, you're going to save on energy.
Question. Even though it may not be in your statistics here, has anything been done to determine the relative benefits of conifers versus deciduous trees?
In what setting?
Take a typical residential setting. You decided to plant a dozen trees in your yard to gain optimal benefits, whatever that means.
I guess I'm thinking, and feel free to anybody else to weigh in on this, but I'm thinking, and I'm sure to answer your question, I guess directly, I'm sure there were studies done. I couldn't cite any, but I guess I'm thinking, using my own house as an example. And I didn't do this, somebody had the foresight years ago to do this, but again, on the south side, I've got a whole bank of windows. And the only trees planted on that side are deciduous trees. So again, in the summer, I benefit by having the leaves, the pulling the trees blocking that sunlight and keeping my house cooler. And then in the winter, when the leaves fall off, the sunlight penetrates, and it's almost like a greenhouse. I have days in the winter where I don't even have to turn. I know my heat doesn't even come on. But I guess it would sort of depend. It would maybe be site specific, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to accomplish a windbreak. That would be different because conifer is going to block them. You have more probability of blocking the wind all year long because it retains its foliage all year long as opposed to the deciduous tree. It's going to shed its needles.
I had a thought about the energetics of those too. In a cold day, or a winter day, like yesterday was 32 outside, but it was 70 something in my house, and they're very large spruce trees on the north side of my house that are over 100 years old. And they're very cold in the morning when the sun hits them. It takes a lot to heat those trees up, and I think there's some energetics that go on just heating and cooling the trees around your house too, and what it feels like in the shade. So yeah, I think the most important thing is for conifers, you use them on the northwest side for windbreaks. Probably the biggest advantage to them, and then the southwest side is where you want to put your deciduous trees because in late afternoon, summer is when it's the hottest, and that's where you want to shade your windows in your house. The morning sun's kind of nice up here because it's cold in the morning during the summer. So that I would think that's big. So I know that agriculture, they have a lot of landscape architect, right? There's a lot of designs for conifers versus deciduous trees and how to plant them in rows and where to achieve the maximum break and energetics around your house and your outbuildings and making more. So yeah, there are plans plans out there. I live in a rural area and I know my neighbors had consulted when they started their farm and they've had people doing tours of their house and everything, so.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say the agricultural side of it, in agriculture, from my college days, 100 years ago, that was one thing, proper placement of trees and what kind of trees, more than agricultural site, but for windbreaks, for farmers, and they figured that out a long time ago, that, where they're located and how they're located, how far back you can from the field too, it makes a difference on lifting how much wind, gets through those too.
Another quick thing to consider is, and we've all seen this, spruce trees have very shallow root systems, so
Yeah.
and we need to consider that versus a deciduous tree that's going to really
We see a lot of big spruce trees, especially after heavy rain and the soil is real wet, and it's, you know, big wind and those big old trees. Really go. So, any other questions about this particular slide? Trees bring us together. Yeah, I think you can all relate to this. I mean, obviously this is a park setting. You don't see too many, bazaars and these kinds of events being set up in areas that are just big open fields. It just isn't that attractive. Again, these are some of the social benefits of having a healthy urban forest. People want to be around that, and a community that's trying to grow and thrive needs a healthy forest. What is the city of Duluth doing? Well, you asked a great question a little while ago about the purpose of the inventory. This kind of tells you what I mentioned earlier, the path that the inventories have taken over the decades. The first one I think was done in the 30s. And you can see now we are down to, our population was about 22,000 maybe in the 1930, about the first survey. Well, I guess those squares there probably indicate the dates of the survey. 1979, then 94, if my memory serves me correct, and then 2013 is when it was completed. All by volunteers too. It's declined by quite a bit. I mean, now we're down to probably about 12,000 trees from 22,000. And again, that's just boulevard trees. It's not counting all the other trees that we lost due to development and whatnot. Lots of volunteer hours put in for planting trees in 2013. I know every one of you is a sort of part of being in the Naturalists program. Volunteer hours are important. I know a lot of you cited volunteer organizations that you're in the activities that you're involved in. Anybody participate in the tree planting that you looked at? These are some of the other volunteer opportunities that city has. What I'm doing here today is one of those things. I volunteered to be a community outreach volunteer to bring this presentation to groups like this, meetings like this. The tree planting is the one that the previous slide addressed. We've got citizen pruners. This is kind of a new one. I'm not even sure, Barb, I don't even know they've done much of it yet because I think it just was kind of came out this summer, spring.
I don't even know if they've trained people yet.
Yeah. This is one you can sign up for, and they're not looking for folks to go in and raise trees up above the sidewalk or the street, that type of thing. It's a lot simpler than that. How suckers can grow up around the base of trees, and they can obscure sidewalks and parking spaces. That's pretty much what they're looking for. They'll provide you with the tools, hand pruners, handsaw, that type of thing. They'll train you in how to do it. And it's one way of not only getting the community involved and getting them to perhaps be a little bit more appreciative of the urban forest. But let's face it, city budgets are tight. All communities, organizations are looking for ways of getting a lot of the work done that the city staff can't do. I think Barb, we had the city, our city representative, Dale Sumner, they're, 300 trees behind on renewables, I think, if I remember right, at the meeting, the last meeting. I mean, they're way behind on just removing trees. I think they got all the trees planted this year that they had. Of course, they had to because they wouldn't be able to keep them through the winter. If I remember right, also, they're not planning on planting very many trees this year. They just, the backlog of other work with the amount of staff and the time that they've got, they just can't get it done. So again, they're relying more and more on volunteers, which I think is a good thing. We all invest in stake and seeing it succeed. Oh, the bottom one, a very important one, invasive species. I don't exactly know how the invasive species training program works, but they're really looking for volunteers to identify invasive species sites wherever you see them. They'll teach you how to remove them. Buckthorn and Japanese knotweed and honeysuckle. I mean, this grows every year. That's a very important one because these invasive species are just they're just out competing on native plants.
If I'm not mistaken, the Amur maple is considered an invasive species, and the city did a lot of landscaping with them. Is there any move to remove those trees?
I don't have an answer for you, okay. And I don't know. There's some species on that list that I don't understand why they're on the list. There's a document that the city has. There's a federal definition of how they determine whether a species is an invasive species or not. I never found bush honeysuckle to be that offensive, but that's on the list. It doesn't grow really that fast. It's another one. To me, that's a little confusing.
Well, it's like buckthorn.
Buckthorn's pretty obvious.
Yeah. And on the maple, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
But it's very obvious to it. And and what they do from what I understand is they take over the area where native species would generally grow, and then the natives eventually would want it. Yeah, and it always puzzled me why. I have to confess that I planted Amur maples in my yard given to me by a person who raised
The
them.
status of a lot of these plants changes over time because the buckthorn was sold in the nursery trade for generations.
Yeah.
People planted it for hedges.
Japanese knotweed was used along stream banks in certain areas to. It's just,
So it's a problem.
Yeah.
I think sometimes invasive is synonymous with non-native,
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
the right definition is,
Yeah.
invasive.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, when you've got a natural, you've got your indigenous plant species when they can't compete effectively with these other. So you're making a choice. Favor the non-native. And buckthorn's got a lot of irritating qualities to it that actually.
Is the planting on the boulevards all coordinated with all the subterranean obstacles, like all of the sewers and pipes and everything else that people have and all the upgrades that they're trying to do?
Yeah, they'll always scope that out. And most of the planting are done in sites that we've already identified in that inventory as plantable sites. But yeah, you've got gas lines and.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff.
Yeah, they'll always combine. And usually the planting events are usually more like events. Let's see the staff out there coordinating it and running without supervision. So they don't just hand out trees and a shovel and spade them. other thing that Duluth is doing, adding more trees around city limits. We talked earlier about the benefits of having, a shaded buildings. They've got lots of grants in the last several years to do some of this. Again, aimed at mitigating the effects of global climate change. These are big old buildings, and can you imagine the heat bill in some of these big old buildings? So they're doing whatever they can. I think this one might be more. Yes, there we go. We're back and forth between those two. It's changing a little bit, hasn't it? Which one looks better? I don't think you're too interested in that. Let's see. Shauna's the one that's putting. Shauna's the one that put this together. Shauna, Barb knows Shauna. Anybody else in here ever met Shauna? Shauna is a. What would you guess? How old would you guess Shauna is? Yeah, it's about
Yeah,
that.
she was a green tour
She was a green tour,
volunteer.
yeah.
I mean, she's just ball energy.
Yeah, she's a biology major. She is so busy, but she has done so much for this city in terms of coming up with ideas and then pushing them, to this. Her and Judy Gibbs were the two principals behind the tree inventory. She's just a really sharp young lady. If you are looking for volunteer opportunities, Sean is a great one to contact. So feel free to jot that email address or give the city a call. They can put you in touch with Sean. Park and Rec are always looking for other, looking for volunteers out too. Park cleanup. Again, doing this. I was telling Andy earlier that we've got the slideshow, but we also do tabling events where the last one I did was at the Lesser Rendezvous, for example. We've got a lot of literature, including some of the stuff that handed up tonight. We've got a professionally done. It's huge. It's three-sided boards with all kinds of data on it, including about invasive species and urban forests and so forth. We're always looking for folks to help with those too. So the whole idea is to engage the public by helping them get a better understanding of the importance of the urban forest. I'm preaching to the choir here tonight. I know that. You folks get it, but lots of folks don't. So it's so important. You saw that that graph. Our urban forest is declining. If the urban forest declines, we're going to have more pollution. We're not going to be able to we're not going to be able to mitigate the effects of climate change, which is accelerating at a rapid pace. So it's not good news if we continue to allow the urban forest to decline. So getting everybody on board, everybody getting an understanding of and appreciating its importance. We can preserve it. I probably shouldn't bring this up, but one of the anybody know what forestry? You know what I'm talking about. And it's a big issue because we struggle between they've got a job to do in rebuilding the infrastructure. It's got to be done, but yet we've got a pretty significant piece of the urban forest that we're going to lose. So it may be inevitable. We're working on a way through the tree commission to see if we can save a few of those trees. If we're unsuccessful, then we need to do a better job in other areas. I mean, some trees have to be sacrificed for a variety of reasons, but if we lose some trees there, we need to plant some other trees somewhere else. Yes, ma'am.
My store for Bob Olin, St. Louis County, where he is, and he really liked the silver maples because they planted those and they grow really fast, and that being said here, they're not very
They don't make the
They'll
boulevard
brittle,
trees.
but they do fast and they're brittle and have storms, so, you know, they're gonna, I mean, if you replant something, maybe years from now they'll be. But, you know, it goes, but I know they hired somebody from out of Duluth to look at that, those trees should be, so, do a good report, so.
The prognosis isn't good. I mean, the
Yeah.
report wasn't very favorable. But, you know, we're going to see what we can do to maybe, you know, save a few. There are a few other species on that block other than silver maple, but yeah, there are. There's a lot of silver maples in that problem.
You guys did the plant like the Northwoods red maple that's, red for this area.
Yeah. We, you know, the memory is correct. We've got, but one thing the city needs to do, and we learned this lesson, well, we didn't learn it so well, because we planted a whole bunch of maples, but I don't know how many of you have been around Duluth long enough to remember when Dutch elm disease came to Duluth. I was actually in Chicago at the time, working in forestry at the time, and, you know, devastated that city. And many cities around it came to Duluth a little bit later. We're still battling Dutch elm a little bit here. The reason you don't see so many red bark trees on it is because so many have died before. But it's still here. Now, you know, emerald ash borer is I think it's imminent. You know, all the experts are saying it's imminent. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We've got 18% of our trees are age trees here, so we're going to lose a significant part of our urban forest. What a lot of communities do when they lost all their elm trees, they were mono-specific. They planted this, you know, a whole bunch of the same trees, and that's where the silver maples. They ended up with so many silver maples. Okay.
So that brings me to a question that I wanted to ask, and that is, how does the city determine what species of trees they're planting where? So for example, the downtown in Canal Park area, it says a 75% impermeable surfaces and that, or pavement, I guess it says. And so it would seem that we want trees with larger crowns that are resistant. So I'm curious, because the trees that got planted in Canal Park are those small crowned, I'm not even sure what species those are, but they're not going to get very big, I don't think, as they grow. So who decides where to plant things? Because it seems like that wasn't a great choice for Canal Park. I don't know, I'm just wondering, how do they determine what gets planted?
You know, I mean, they're learning all the time. They learn from the Dutch elm, but they didn't learn enough because we still focus too much attention on maples. We've got about 38%, I think, of our trees, and the boulevard trees anyway, are maple. You know, different species, but they're all the maple genus, and that's a problem.
Ones downtown are they large?
No.
They have that teardrop shape.
Yeah.
By the steel pins, the maximum tree.
I'm not sure who makes the decision what they should species, because they've been trying to diversify, plant oaks and maples and basswood and, you know, a variety of things, so that we don't have too many of any one species.
And is the city collaborating with the university because they're doing things?
You know, we don't have an official state forest. So,
I think those decisions, I think they're making, they're starting to make pretty good decisions with respect to those
I don't
things
know
now.
who that person is.
You know, relative to, specific to, you know, Canal Park and areas like Canal Park, you probably have there, you've got very limited planting sites. And you can't put a large, you know, depending upon the physiology of the tree, how deep the roots go, how big is the crown. You can't have a crown that's going to be, bumping into the buildings and traffic and everything else. So, you'll see a lot of smaller species. Some of the, probably one of the bigger species that you might see occasionally that can work. You'll see some honey locusts occasionally.
Just over by the parking lot, you think you want that, for the reasons you specified, you want big trees.
The
But
parking lot
by
you would.
Where people park, and walk, that's all open there. So that to me should be developed so that you have large trees and places for people to come because they do there.
The other issue with
Seems like you want to.
And of course, the downtown area is going to be treated differently than a residential area. Depends on how big the site is. They're going to be doing that Superior Street reconstruction, and that's an ongoing debate now too. part of it's engineering. You know, we get the same issue we faced with Fourth Street. You know, the engineers are quick to always, engineers prefer to have trees. We need to fill this room with engineers. But you know, they're focused on getting their job done, and you know, they've got to dig the street level. And they, you know, so having, you know, big trees in the way to do that, or the flip side of that is to try and go to extraordinary means to save all these trees, even when they know that they're going to be, you know, cutting the roots on three sides of most of these trees. They are going to make, you know, the vast majority are going to make. So it boils down to taking them down and taking them down later. It's cheaper to take them down now, and it also makes the job that needs to be done easier too, rather than taking them down later. But at the same time, you know, when you do a mile section of 4th Street, all of a sudden you go from this beautifully canopied street to a completely denuded street. It's a shock to the system, and it's a shock to the ecosystem. But,
I'm thinking about that ash. Is the city of Duluth doing anything proactively? We're heard a lot about the city of Superior is cutting down the ash boulevard trees and replacing them before they are even sick.
well, they found, of course, you know, they found EAD in Superior, but we haven't found it in Duluth yet. They're doing sampling. They've got some sample trees on Park Point down near almost to the end by the soccer field, I believe. And periodically they're going in and clipping off some branches way up high, and then they're examining those branches, testing them to see if there's any evidence of beetles. And so far they found nothing. So, but again, it's going to come. I mean, it's going to be, you know, whether it's a beetle's life in Superior that gets us, or it's a piece of firewood that somebody brings from, you know, across the village. It's, you know, one or the other is going to bring it here. So, to address your question, part of we have a start date. The city does have sort of they've got a draft plan for the EAD management plan, and we're starting. That's one of our roles with the tree commission. We're going to start seeing if we can push that a little bit. It's going to be really expensive. You know? So there's all kinds of different, you know, ways of doing it. We take out some trees, which size class we take out, you know, where do we take them out? There are chemical treatments, you know, that can be injections that can be done in trees, and it's expensive, but it might be worth it on some trees. And you know, again, the public needs to be educated about this too. If somebody's got a beautiful ash tree that really, you know, defines their yard and they want to keep it, they're going to have to be proactive on doing it, because once the deal is too late.
Has there been any discussion about, I know we don't have a great climate for it, but the concept of food forest, where we actually plant trees and shrubs that bear fruit?
You know, there's some stuff going on that I don't know enough about it, but you know, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the city is as involved with it as maybe we would like, but I think there's a lot of members of the community that are thinking along those lines. They brought it to the city. I know there's one area where, where we're going to do that Steve O'Neill planting. But planting, you know, things that can be harvested, things that can be used by the community.
I know
So,
I was going to say the Hillside Public Orchard, I think initially when they were developing that, I know when they've done some of the school rebuilds, my kids go to former grants in Myersville, and they have an orchard that they planted for young trees. It's been a long time until they produce, but that's what they've planted in. Keep in mind.
but I mean, it's on the radar screen. So,
Has the tree commission ever taken up on the topic of elevated pine forests in Hartford?
we just finished that. We hope it's finished. You want to elaborate, Barb?
There's a letter to the other,
Is that?
No, I didn't see
well,
that.
it was somebody that, I don't know who the person was, that saying that we should just cut the trees down rather than rewrite the airport. Because we worked a lot with the airport authority to try to revise a better regulations and protect the trees.
Yeah, the plan that they are in favor of is making some, actually filling in the bay a little bit, and then reorienting the runway. And that's their favorite plan. That's the plan that the tree commission endorsed. We sent a letter to them. So that's the plan that we endorsed, and we cited our reasons why. If that's what they ultimately do, we believe that, you know, in our lifetimes for sure we'll never have to address that issue again.
I've lived on the point for close to 45 years and worked on a lot of environmental issues and I've done a lot of tree planting. I worked on a lot of committees and wrote a lot of timelines and things like that. And this has been an ongoing issue since almost the inception of the airport. And plans that have come up, it's really humorous to me because the latest, the plan to put the runway out, you know, actually was first devised by a volunteer, a part-time volunteer member of the and it was just, you know, that was blown up. So I'm really glad that the tree commission has taken a stand because we've been fighting to keep those trees forever.
That's one of my favorite places to hike.
You said the city may not be planting trees next year because of budgetary reasons, but would they have trees available if there were volunteers to plant them?
You know, I don't know, I shouldn't say they're planting no trees. Actually, there's a lot of projects that are going on where forestry would be a perfect example, though I don't think that's next year anyway. That's the following year. But, you know, projects like that where trees are being removed, you know, they'll certainly going to be replacing those trees. But a lot of those, you know, sites that we identified in the tree inventory that are plantable sites, or if they've got, you know, trees that they subsequently taken down. Yeah, that's pretty low on the priority list right now. Whether they'll have trees for the community members to plant, I think they're getting away from that, if I remember. They haven't had a great deal of success with it. What happens is somebody's really enthusiastic about planting a tree. You know, trees cost money, they're not cheap, and people plant a tree and then it doesn't get cared for the property. So I think they, at least for the time being, I think they're kind of abandoning that.
I've seen them see plant trees in the Duluth water though. There's a lot
Sounds like that.
of like watching the shrubs. So that would be a volunteer thing if you're not planning to take that up.
It was expensive to lose.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. It's hard to see that, or having owners take on responsibility too. Highways did that one kind of, but I don't think of it.
Yeah, but again, that's another, you know, why I'm here and, you know, what you guys are here, you know, what you're doing is it's just awareness. People, you take trees for granted. Stick it in the ground and you know, people think they're just going to make it, but they don't. You know, depending on the weather conditions, you know, they need some help. And so you know, getting the public more aware of the importance of your forest, but then the individual trees, because each individual tree makes up the urban forest every time you lose one. But the city, one thing in your plan to increase the city is going to be getting better at is monitoring contractors who are doing these projects, and then part of the project includes, you know, planting new trees. They failed miserably on Glenwood.
That's just the example I was thinking of.
Yeah, and that was a situation where the contractor just dropped the ball. So they're working on plans to hold these contractors accountable, make sure they meet some minimum own standards, planting these trees, taking care. What happened with those? Those trees, we were in a kind of a pretty warm spell there. All those trees, bare root stock, they set up there, and they died before they ever got in the ground. And, but they planted it anyway.
What percentage of the trees are boulevard trees versus private?
I don't have an answer. I mean, obviously, the boulevard trees make up a very small percentage of the looser forest. Because we've got a lot of parks, we've got a lot of green space in this community. I don't have an answer, but
Can a private party plant a tree on the boulevard without the city's
at
blessing?
your expense, maybe. They had a program, I think up until this past year, did they Mark have a program where you could pay like $25 in the city would give you a tree?
Yeah.
And you could
But I
plant
think-
it?
yeah.
But I think they're not doing that.
But I think you can plan that ready for one, but you have to realize that the city needs to dig it up. They will. Because I planted perennials in my around the trees and stuff, but knowing that you might have to let it go.
I can't imagine they would say no. They might want to use some suggestions on species choice or something. And certainly they want to come on and I can't remember what the question before. I think it was you about making sure there's no utilities immediately in the area of plant too. I think they'd probably be happy. It's a plantable site and you want it to be very expensive. I'm sure they'd be happy to encourage you to do it.
Well, you mentioned that you have marked all the plantable sites. So those are designated plantable sites. Seems like coordinate that with homeowners and tree there.
Some of us. With homeowners planting the
Yeah, where you said your GPS marked these places where trees could be planted. So what happens with those GPS plates? Are they available to homeowners?
Well, they're all part of the inventory. The city's in the entry program that would say you put on the data. Like I say, if you live at 2922 Superior Street, they know what trees are like in front of your house. So if there's an empty planting spot there, they get a lower or whatever their expense will need to do. I'm sure that keep in mind some of these planting spots probably still have stuff there.
Does the city assign values to the existing trees?
The iTree program will do that. And I've looked at it and I haven't looked at it enough and anybody explained it to me, so I don't really know exactly how it works. But yeah, you can evaluate a tree based on species and size and condition. If you've ever had I think there's a program, I was going to say, I think real estate expected, let's say you're just a specimen elm tree in your backyard, and that elm tree is lost because of something in the neighborhood. There are sources out there where it might just boil down to having a professional come and look at it. You do an estimate on what that tree would worth, so your neighbor's insurance might get paid for it.
I was thinking kind of in terms of like a boulevard tree that's cut down by the homeowner because it's blocking the view or something, or somebody runs off the road with their car or truck and knocks over a boulevard tree. Are
You're talking more about liability.
yeah. Are they? Well, is there a value assigned to the tree then to assess then to the individual?
I think the iTree program that I'm referring to, that's a sort of different value than legal liability situation. Again, it was a tree in your own property, and some guy veered off the road and smashed into your specimen elm tree, and now it's declining in health. You call your insurance company and they'd have somebody, they'd figure out somebody to come out and look at that thing. You might have to have, if you've ever been involved in any kind of an insurance claim against somebody else, they don't like the number that your guy comes up with. They'll send their own guy out there to give you an adjustment value on it too. But eventually you're going to come to, when it's arbitration or something, they're going to come up with a value. But I think a personal value, how that, because that tree that we're talking about there, that has an impact on your home value, your property value. That's a little bit different than how a city evaluates in terms of value for your tree that might go over the money. There's somewhat related, but to answer your question, yeah, we've done it. I'm just going to give you one final number here. Glasses. Bob, do you remember from the survey, what's the total number of about it? Oh, it's on that one thing there too. Like a little over 12,000, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, 12,000 something for total over trees. I mean, we've got some major apartment complexes, Aspen and some of those places. They just got thousands and thousands of trees. So it's a the trees in Duluth controls in the city is basically a pretty small percentage of the total water forest. Again, why it's important for citizens to get an understanding of life. There's a lot of trees in the city can't have been say over. Well, I've taken up a lot more than I thought. Anybody have any other questions? I'll answer what I can.
Just a comment. I haven't seen a recent copy, so I'm kind of speaking from something I've seen previously. Minnesota Power used to have a book, I don't know, 75 pages, something like that. Each page covering a different species of bush or tree. The names for it and dimensions, how tall it grows, et cetera. Their focus being more in terms of private parties planting near like power lines or something like that. But it was interesting to the extent that it also gave, for example, diseases to which that particular plant would be susceptible. What kind of soil conditions would be best for that tree or bush? Advantages and disadvantages to that particular species. And that used to be available to MP customers at least. So
Looks like they have a copy online, so I can send out that link.
and so where I was going with that was, so the city has its inventory and its methods of dealing with boulevard trees. I suspect there are more issues with dealing with trees planted on private property, though, and so publicly available information like that for somebody who's replacing an aged tree.
There's lots of sources.
Yeah.
Lots of information. Someone did the landscape architect. Oh, from my boss. Sorry, Mark. You probably have 3 or 4 of those books in your own personal library. I think I've got a couple of those as well. And they'll give you a small detail about each of those trees. How they identify and where they grow that. And it's sort of related, and Bill mentioned it earlier. Someone brought the question about, we were talking earlier about who decides where to plant stuff and what we're going to plant and so forth. One thing that's been interesting to me in the last couple of years is because of climate change, how different the species that are going to be planted here in Duluth in this northern climate are going to be based on what they used to be. We're now looking at trees like talpa, Kentucky coffee tree, You know, a lot of species that you would only see in, you know, down southern Illinois, you know, that type of thing. So, the climate's changing, and so the kinds of trees that we can plant, unfortunately, so the kinds of trees that we can plant up here, you know, are different, which, you know, in some respects will be a good thing. You know, we'll have more species diversity, you know, help us avoid things like, you know, catastrophes like Naturalists and Naturalists. Anything else? Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Andy, how many of these would you like to leave for?
Why don't we leave just a couple, and we can contact you if we need more.
And thank you, Mike and Barb, for your advocacy
Yes.
for the city. It's really important to have you doing that. It's really appreciated.
Well, I'll put in a plug for the tree commission here. We need 2 more tree commissioners. So if anybody's time and volunteer inclinations might lead you in that direction, I don't know, contact Barb or call or Sean or something. I should have our contact passed. We kept going all week. We are down 2, maybe 3, at least 2. Yeah. So we need some more. We need a couple more tree commissioners.
Thank you.
We have meetings where we don't even have enough members for various reasons to have a forum, you know, vote on things. And, you know, just more bodies, more ideas, more energy. So if anybody's inclined, that would let us know. You don't have to be any expert on trees by any means, but I think most of you here are easily could easily learn a lot of good, good information to provide. I thank you all.
Appreciate your time. Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thank you.